Well, welcome back, everybody, to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick,
And I'm Cory.
and we're so thankful that you're joining us on this journey. Excited about today. I'm excited about the week that we've had. So
Crazy.
thank you if you're listening or watching on YouTube or the GAN network. We're so thankful for you. We have some big news to share as we had 2 record-breaking days last week. I believe it was last
Monday, we hit
Monday.
the most listens in a single day than we ever had in history.
Yeah, which is crazy because our episodes release on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
So for a Monday to have the most ever listens on any day in the history of this podcast is crazy. Well, then we followed that up when our podcast dropped last Wednesday. It broke that record.
Almost by double.
So it was a pretty insane, pretty incredible week. I know, Cory, you were texting me like, what is happening right now?
Well, we had we had almost 1,500 downloads in just the 7-day span. Which,
so we also set a record for a week.
For a week. We'd never had hit 1,000. The closest we ever had was over 900, like twice. And I don't really pay attention. I look at the numbers, but it was just one of those things what is going on?
Right.
That so many people are listening. I think a lot of it has to do with you all sharing this podcast, and we appreciate all of the love, all of the share. I think when people find out about us, they go back and they might binge 20 or 30 episodes in a week, and that's kind of what I think happens.
So keep that up. Like, share, subscribe, and if you haven't already, leave us a review. We love listening to that.
Speaking of liking and sharing, this is Wednesday, I will be putting out a post today. So if you see that post on Facebook and on Instagram, and if you're not on those, sorry, get on them. We're going to do that, giving away gift cards, because as this is episode 194, we're almost at episode 200, which is a big deal in the podcast world. We're going to be giving away $200. We're going to give away 5 $20 gift cards, and one winner is going to win a $100 gift card just as an appreciation. But you got to follow some of the rules. You got to share and
so
like
watch
some
those
stuff.
Posts. Make sure you comment.
Go do it
all
right
the stuff
now.
that you're getting ready to be asked to do. Follow those directions, and you'll be entered into that drawing.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
It is exciting, and as a Detroit sports fan, the Tigers are in the playoffs, which we did something that only 2 teams have done in the history of baseball. We're in the playoffs. As you're listening to this, hopefully Scooball won Game 1 for us yesterday, but I'm hoping for a first round victory for my Tigers. And Lions are
I've
playing
never
great.
heard you say Tigers on here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're like a Detroit boy and you like all Detroit sports, but I really didn't think you cared about the Tigers that much.
I do when they're good. I am a bandwagon Tigers fan. I mean, I represent the Tigers because I'm from Detroit, but I hadn't watched as much of baseball as I have over the last 2 weeks since their 2012 World Series run. So
awesome. So anyway, Detroit.
So stupid.
Hey, it's Detroit. It's okay. But anyways, we're so thankful for you. Also, we just want to take just a brief opportunity to give out thoughts, prayers to those that have really went through a tough weekend with Hurricane Helene coming through. I know we've had several listeners reach out, give us updates on what's happening in their community, how they've been affected. And I know, of course, where Hurricane Helene hit, like in the Panhandle and up through Florida, was pretty bad, but then especially through Georgia and then Asheville, North Carolina, South Carolina into Tennessee, it's like devastating and heartbreaking. So our thoughts are with you. If you are affected, I would say reach out. Let us maybe see how we can give some help in this season to you, or even just be praying for whatever you're going through as well.
Yeah, just devastating. I didn't realize it was that bad until I started seeing pictures and videos show up on the internet, and I was like, whoa, I was not aware of how devastating it was.
Right, especially when you've physically been to some of these places. I know my wife and I just got away on a weekend getaway to Asheville, like I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. We were there for like 4 days, and to see all the spots that we were just at, like completely covered in water, to see the interstate that we drove on to get there, like it's just gone in places, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this is a long road of recovery after this.
Yeah,
for so many people.
I'm flabbergasted, to be honest.
I know. It is pretty crazy. But let's go ahead and get into the episode. I think in light of that, taking care of our mental and emotional health is important to do for when we're faced with circumstances like that in our life. And not that it will negate the pain or the trouble or the heartache that we may go through. But at the same time, we'll be able to go through it in a better light. And we're actually going to be jumping in to a new kind of series, if you will, on this podcast. And we're titling it, What If I Told You?
What if I told?
What if I told you? So,
What if I told you?
of course, we did this in light of the release of Cory's book that
Can
we're
you
getting
believe
ready
that?
to celebrate 1 year in November.
In November, right here.
And
if
so
you're
we thought
watching.
we would do a little lead up to that 1 year anniversary and just take some time now that maybe a lot of our listeners have gotten the book, a lot of our listeners have went through the book. We're going to do the same and then highlight some different things. And especially you, Cory, will be able to speak to why you wrote some of the things that you did, like the reasons for it and the help that you wanted to give to people. And so if you've read it, great. This is going to be an encouragement to you. If you haven't read it, maybe this will inspire you to go purchase the book. I know you can still get it on Amazon, and I know Cory would appreciate that. And it'd be good just for you to go with it, go through it with us as we go through it. And so let's just get started right away. So this is a devotion. It's a 21-day devotion. So let's start with why 21 days. You could have chosen a lot of different numbers, a lot of different days. Some people do a week. Some people do, let's do a month. Let's do a 90-day devotional. Why 21 days?
Yeah, 21 was specific because in the mental health and counseling world, there's a lot of psychology and neuroscience that I've been studying and looking to, and I was really inspired by Dr. Caroline Leaf, and her research team has done all of the research on this specific topic, and she says it takes 63 days or 3 cycles of 21 days to break down one bad habit or thought pattern. And so it only takes 1 cycle of 21 days to break down a core habit and then build up a replacement one. And then to avoid falling back into that habit or thought pattern, it's recommended to go through this cycle twice. So the reason for why I did the devotional 21 days was specifically because of that. And then you could go through it as many times with either a similar negative thought or we have all of us struggle with negative thoughts that we talk to or speak over ourselves. Some of them are conscious, some of them are subconscious. So it takes time to retrain the brain, how you think about yourself. And this isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. So when you take the little sips in between long droughts, you'll never be satisfied. So wait, what did I just say?
You said
when you
satisfied.
take little sips between long droughts, you will never be satisfied. Yeah, this is about taking little sips on a consistent basis. I don't know why I wrote that, but that was really good.
No, it's okay.
That's not included in the devotional, so that was a little extra.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's why I wrote it specifically for 21 days. It's short. It'll take you maybe 10 minutes a day, 5 to 10 minutes each day. And it's really tackling one negative thought because neuroplasticity is the way you can change the way that you think.
Rewire your thinking.
But that is new in retrospect to life. Like we've discovered this within the last 3 decades that you can actually change. So when people used to say that this is just how I am, or this was how I was like you, that can now be defeated. Is that the right word?
Refuted.
There you go. Refuted with science that you can actually change thought patterns and you can change outcomes of how you live your life. And I thought, man, it was really, really important for me when I went through the counseling journey to confront some of the things that I used to say about myself, some things I'm still confronting even in my own life and getting better at how I speak to myself, specifically aligning myself with how the Father views me, which we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, this book, it was supposed to be 21 Days to Confidence. And you actually came up with a better title, which is What If I Told You, a 21-day guide to knowing who you are and why it matters. And I love that thought process because, again, I'm not so much in the business of giving you answers, but rather asking better questions because you're smart enough to deal with some things. And really, the goal of this book was to help open up the fact that many of us would confront people if they talk to us the way that we talk to us. Yeah. So why don't we get better thoughts about ourselves? And it's not prideful. So,
no, I love that. And I really think that the title is great for a book like this.
Yeah, it is because you came up with it.
And, well, no, not just that, just because of what it speaks to, because of what you just mentioned. When people say, well, this is just the way that I am, or I think the way that I do based on circumstance or experience, which we all do, but then people think that they're stuck that way. But then with a title like What If I Told You, it really is this thing where, what if I told you life could be different? What if I told you you could make a different decision? What if I told you you're one decision away from completely changing the trajectory of your life? What if I told you were one habit away from like changing, and that drastically like affecting your life and your family tree, like all of these things, that this intrigue
Yeah.
that it leads to with what if I told you. And I love that you use the word consistency as well, because I know one thing in your book that you, I'm not sure if I remember right. I know it's in the beginning. I'm not sure if it's every day along the way, but you talk about this thing that's called process. And with this consistency, you always use this, like, I think, phrase like, hey, I got a word of caution for you.
Yeah.
That, like, this Devo is set up on Proverbs 23:7, which says, as a man thinks, he is. So, in other words, how you think about yourself is the most important thing you'll do, but this is a process, it's a journey, it's an adventure. And the word of caution is, this is not instantaneous change. Like, it takes time, it takes hard work, and what you already said, it takes consistency. And so as you use this, and you use this devotion, you can think of it like this: that a lack of confidence is a bad habit that takes time to break. And so it's important to align and boldly proclaim what God has said about you,
Has to say about you.
has to say
Yeah.
about you, or has said about you, either
Yeah.
one. And so the goal is
Both. Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
to help you believe that you matter, and yes, to build confidence. I know that's was the original title of the book, is
Yeah.
what you just said, 21 Days to Confidence. And honestly, when I tell people about your book and things, I actually still call it that.
I know.
And
What was that for so long?
you've had to correct me a few times. I'm just like, man, this is a really great journey. It's 21 Days to Confidence.
It
And you're
was
like,
that
well,
for
it's a
like
21-day devotional. It's called What If I
as
Told You?
as I was writing it, it took me like several years to write it. Actually, some of the like I think the first 7 days were blog posts from 2019 that I refigured into the process. So it's been five years of writing, and it was always going to be a slow devotional on confidence. And I think like 2 months before the publisher got a hold of it, we changed the title because I just really liked the provocative title of What If I Told You? And it is a 21-day journey, but 20 of the days are specifically around words that many church people would agree or believe are true about them, but realistically we don't. And we'll talk about that. We're gonna pick apart, I think, 2 a day for the next couple weeks, just to really just ask some thought-provoking questions and get you to think again the right views of how the Father views you, because confidence in the Greek means to boldly proclaim what's in you, which again, we talk a lot on this podcast. The gospel is not an invitation, it's a declaration. Paul even understood that Jesus didn't reveal himself to Paul, but already in Paul before Paul made a decision. And so this is what I think the goal is to remind you of what is already within you, what has always been within you, to really help you walk in the confidence of knowing who you are as a son or a daughter of God. And in the beginning, I challenge people around some daily habits. There are, in my opinion, 3 things that we should just get comfortable doing and saying over ourselves. And this actually came from a sermon that you and I both prepared. And little did we know COVID was going to shut it down. We were doing a sermon series in our church called Make It Known.
Yeah.
Remember this, 2020?
Oh, yeah.
And my topic was make it known the confidence within. And so we were prepping, and we came up with, you actually helped me come up with these 3 things, because it was right after we did that live Facebook 4-week series on John Mark Comer's book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Right.
And we were developing some personal steps in our own walk, and we actually came up with this as we were talking about the fact that the world around us was full of chaos, but it didn't mean that our individual lives had to be. So this was something that we actually started to do because we were, if we were being honest, full of anxiety. And so the first one was a focus on God's faithfulness, which again, it's really hard to think about God's faithfulness when you're in the middle of chaos. But when you take a moment and remember on how faithful he's been in your life, it will produce gratitude. And then the second one was to embrace slow living, which we did and have and continue to do. And I feel like I'm in such a better place here in 2024 than I was before 2020 because I really did practice slow living. And then number 3 was, again, what the whole essence of this book is to learn to fall in love with you. and even say things to yourself like, I love me. Because in our culture, especially in the Christian culture, we're like, no, you can't say that. That'll produce pride.
Right.
No, wrong. It's impossible for it to produce pride because it's not you who did it. I'm aligning with how the Father views me,
Yeah.
and the Father is in love with me as I am, not a future version of me. And so if Father is in love with me as I am right now, why aren't you in love with you, even though you might be in process? And so again, this is what I specifically teach in day one and what you do every single day after day one when we talk about Mamba mentality. But before I gave some preface about the 5 R's, which again, you helped me with that. You helped me with a lot of this book, actually.
Well, it is what it is.
The
We
5 R's
we
were
just
good.
actually just have conversation. I think that's where a lot
Yeah.
of our sermon series come from. It's where a lot of our podcast episodes come from, just from having just conversation around this and around spiritual things, around how we relate and see different scripture in light of new covenant finished work. And for me, I'm just going to go back to those daily habits. Whenever I find myself maybe in a little bit of turmoil, whenever I find myself feeling anxiety, like a heavy weight on my life, um, I instantly go to the first two there. One, you said focus on God's faithfulness. I think to myself, in what area am I not trusting God in? And I even go back to this past Sunday. Dean actually did a little like rendition, just a chorus of an old hymn, and it talked about I trust Him, like Jesus. I trust in Him, and I can't sing it. I can't even remember the words fully, except this idea of trust. And I got a little emotional, like, man, my world's been a little chaotic lately, and I feel like, man, I feel like I want to trust Him in so many areas, but there's still so many areas that I try to take control in. And the more I try to take control sometimes and want at certain outcomes instead of just living in the flow, like we talk about a lot, is when I feel the heaviest weight. And then I ask myself the second question. You said embrace slow living. Like, okay, where am I living hurried or rushed, or I'm feeling overwhelmed? Am I taking time for myself to fall in love with myself, to work on myself and focus on myself? So that honestly, those three are great, and definitely would be daily habits that you need to implement. Just asking those three questions and going along those lines. So I love that. But yeah, you talked about these 5 R's, and we actually talked about this on episode 146 whenever you did the book launch last year. I think we also brought them up again on 146 and 156 when we talked about mental fitness, because at the end of the day, all of us feel at times fear, shame, rejection, but how do we deal with those things? And so you came up with this process and how to process fear, shame, and rejection when we're feeling that. I would even add in there maybe anxiety, worry, but I would say that would be a byproduct of fear and shame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Most times, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just go through these real quick, just as a recap for you, our listener, as you think about these things. But as you process those things in fear, shame, and rejection, the first step is just to recognize maybe a negative thought that you have.
Yeah. And that, again, that's the purpose of the devotion is you have to just get honest. And I'm asking you just to be honest with yourself. You don't have to share this with other people yet. But like, what is something that you find yourself saying to yourself? And you have to admit it, like bring it to the surface and write it out. I encourage people to write things out. If it's not written, it's not real. But if you never admit to that negative thought because you don't want to actually admit that it's there, you're like, nah, I kind of think about it, but it's not true, because if I admit it or write it down, then it is true. But if you never admit to the thought, then you can never begin to work on either redeeming it, replacing it, or confronting it. So you have to be honest. You have to start recognizing the way that you think about yourself.
Okay, so then after you recognize it, the next step is to release it. What does that look like?
Yeah, and this is a continual process. This isn't like a one and done type thing. But when you don't release it, you end up actually focusing on it. And when you focus on it, it doesn't actually leads to a chain in action. So it actually leads to repetition. And so you just got to release it. And the second one is coincided with the third one, which is the process of rewiring your thinking. So when you recognize the negative thought, you write it down, you release it. And how do you release it? By rewiring your thinking. So you write out the contradiction, which is the truth, in replace of what you just wrote out. So write out on a sticky note or on your bathroom mirror, like write the truth out, something that you see every single day. I kind of use that as your personal motto, which you're going to hear us talk about here in a second. But when you release a negative thought, you're rewiring how you are thinking by replacing that negative thought with a positive one. So again, if you just release it without rewiring and focusing on the positive thought, it's not going to be helpful. So you have to confront that negative thought with the truth, which is a positive confrontation of that negative thought. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you have to speak your identity found in Christ over your life every day. This is why, again, you will create a personal motto. If you haven't read the book yet, I encourage you to create a personal motto, and I'll explain that here at the end of this episode. But yeah, so it's recognize the negative thought, release it, and then rewire your thinking towards that negative thought.
Right. And I would say 100%, this is a work not done alone. I would say it's done in conjunction with the Holy Spirit speaking over you what is true in your life. Because I know so many people, they get to that spot like where they're like, okay, what's then that positive thought?
Yeah.
What is that positive thing that Jesus would speak over my life? And I don't even know what that may be. And so I would encourage you. I know the Spirit's always speaking. He's encouraging. He guides us into all truth, the truth about who Jesus is, but also the truth about who we are. And so if you would, again, pause long enough, get away from the hurry, I promise the Spirit is speaking, and He will show you and give you some of those things that are positive that He would want you to speak over your life.
And if you can't think of any, there's 20 in the book.
There you
20
go.
in the book.
Yeah. So the Spirit and Cory will give you the words.
Well, from the Spirit, there it is.
I know. That was going to be my next little joke. So we got recognize the negative thought, release it, rewire your thinking. And then the next step is to actually redevelop your habit.
Yeah. So you just got to start taking control back of not just how you think, but what you are doing with your time. And this matters. And so many people don't do this. And then they wonder why their outcomes aren't being reached the way that they had hoped or dreamed. And so I started writing out my weekly schedule, which now I spend about 30 to 45 minutes on either Thursday or Monday, depending on the week, writing out what I'm going to do for the week. And people would be like, that's a waste of 30 or 40 minutes. And I found from personal experience that I get more accomplished when I have it written down and process, even though I'm taking up time to do that. And so write out your weekly schedule and your goals. Like what's a goal that you want to have in your own spirit and how you talk about yourself? Because again, if it's not written, it's not real. So I would encourage you, challenge yourself to be generous, not just with your finances, but with your words and your time. Don't just have good intentions, because your intentions mean nothing if you don't follow through. Set reminders on your phone. That's the greatest thing about the Apple iPhone is I set reminders on a regular basis. Hey, remind me to text my wife, because when I get in work mode, I'm not thinking of other people.
Yeah.
Remind me on Tuesday at 2. I get a reminder every 2:00 to do breathing exercises, which I do outside of my office looking at your house, which is really weird. If you're ever out there at 2:00, no, I'm looking at you. But I practice breathing and being intentional with my day. I also do some somatic shaking. If you're into that world, you can look that up on YouTube. That gets really weird real quick. But set reminders on your phone to be encouraging to people. If I'm talking to somebody and they're telling me about something that's happening in their next month, right, I set a reminder. I had a friend just tell me that he was getting, 4 weeks ago, he told me he was getting his vasectomy. Well, I paid attention to the day, and as soon as I left that party, I put a reminder in it, and I texted him, and he goes, "How did you remember that?" I didn't.
Yeah.
I set a reminder on my Apple iPhone.
When you heard, yeah.
So just
and I'm sure it was
some
funny meme.
It
wasn't
was
just
great.
a text.
I did. It was so inappropriate. It was great for all of you that
No,
understand.
I will say on the receiving end of this, I've experienced this. I also set a lot of reminders. Like I'm to that age, I can't remember anything. So I have like 30 reminders set on my phone about all kinds of stuff. But I was with Melanie last week. I think it was last week or the week before. And I think it was a Friday afternoon. I was already off, and her text reminder, the little notification went off. And I'm like, oh, what do you need? What did you need reminded of? And she's like, oh, I have it set every Tuesday and Friday to give you a text. And I wasn't even mad. I'm like,
that's
hey,
amazing.
That's
As
amazing.
Someone who, yeah, I love it. You have to start getting better habits in your life, and you don't have to wait till New Year's. You can start today. And so that was really the goal of learning to redevelop your habits. Because again, as you recognize the negative thought, as you release it, as you rewire the thinking, you have to then begin to redevelop your habits or I was going to say something that didn't start with a re, but I was trying on the fly, but it was almost like change the tune. Like you got to change the playlist. Like if you're set on the same playlist
Right.
and you want your mood to change your playlist. You know what I'm saying? So
No, I love that. And then at the end of the day, the fifth step is just to repeat everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
All those 4 steps. It's a continual process. Again,
Repeat it.
We keep going back to that, and that is the word of caution. This isn't a one-time thing. It doesn't lead to instantaneous change day 1, day 2, but like it's a consistent thing. As you put in the time and the work and continue to repeat that process, you will see a change in your mental, emotional health. I really believe that.
And that's why I say in the word of caution that this takes time, but it's also exhausting. Like this is why people sometimes don't do the work, because you listen to what we just said over the last 10 minutes and you'd be like, that's way too much work. Well, it's like that question that's like, choose your hard. Like marriage is hard, but so is divorce. Even though I don't like speaking that marriage is hard over. You have hard seasons and hard moments, but marriage is amazing. But at the end of the day, you get to choose your hard. Like being stuck in poor thought habits is hard, and changing that is hard. Choose your hard. And I'd rather get to a place where instead of it taking me weeks and months to process something, it's only taking me moments. And that's, again, is the goal of the work. It's the goal of everything that I've gone through in the counseling world since 2018, which really started to change my life. And so you have to repeat that process while giving yourself grace. Listener, it is a long journey, but it can be a fun one. And so getting emotionally healthy is fun when you do it the right way. So,
love that. And so that was basically the intro.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
giving
book,
you all like
and,
the feedback and what
how to not address, but how to prepare for each day.
Yep.
That is the preparation.
Yep.
What we just went through, and it's finally time to get to day 1. And I know you mentioned on this podcast over the next, I guess, 2 months or so, we will be just going through 2 days every episode, but we do have to get to day 1.
It'll be quick though, because day 1 has
and we're
been
not going
set
to give
up.
everything, because
Right.
we also want you to get the book. We want you to go through
But if you
this
don't,
process
it's
on your
okay.
own.
You don't have to get the book. But if you're listening and you haven't gotten this book, what are you doing with
Yeah,
your life?
what are you
It's
waiting for?
$11, it will change your life.
So day 1, and I remember this from the book, is the Mamba mentality.
Yeah, it's the only one of the days. That's why I said 20 days. It's
Yeah.
the only one of the days that doesn't have a specific word to.
You said 20 words earlier that
Yeah.
that we can speak over ourselves.
That you identify with these 20 words. But the first one is a setup for the 20-day devotional, because
Right.
it goes along with that intro. Mamba mentality. Shout out Kobe. Rest in peace. Kobe Bryant had this mentality when it came to basketball where he was focused. People almost didn't enjoy being around him because they knew not only is he going to work hard, but he's going to push you to be the best. There's always that Redeem Team documentary. They were talking about how one night they went out partying and some guys were coming back at 4 a.m. and Kobe is drenched in sweat. And they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I've already had a workout in. Like I went to bed, woke up early and did a workout. You're just coming home from the clubs.
Right.
And it was like that process. They were like, he is just different. And so I love it. I've read his book. I've watched his documentaries. I just love that mentality. That's why I called it Mamba mentality. I bought a jersey of his that says the Mamba Academy. I'm just a big fan of this mentality, because how you think about what you do and how you think about who you are, again, is the most important thinking you will do. And so I compare, using some examples of Kobe, I compare life to Kobe and recognize that the true confidence grows when you begin to love yourself the way that your creator does. Now, if you look at the life of Kobe, obviously he did a lot of things to gain that confidence from an athletic ability. I'm trying to help you recognize that everything that God already speaks about you is already inside of you. So the hard work isn't your doing to become. Your hard work is believing what is already true.
Yeah. I love that. And it is hard work. And it's not something that we can just, I'm just going to throw this out there as a pastor. Maybe you don't think I should be saying this, but I will. It's not just praying to God and then he would just do it.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Yeah.
I started a new show with Melanie a couple days ago. It is the show Yellowstone. And there's a character in the show, the dad, John Dutton, played by Kevin Costner. And he's doing this celebration or this fundraising dinner, and he has to pray at the end. And he prays, and he stands up, and he said, "God, would you send us rain and a little bit of luck, and we'll do the rest. Amen." And I'm like, I looked at Mel, I'm like, that might be the most amazing prayer I've ever heard in my life someone pray. Not, God, can you do all this stuff for us? God, can you send the rain and do this and this and this? No, he just said, hey, you send the rain and a little bit of luck and I'll do the rest. And I'm like, we have to get back to this idea where we are co-laborers. Like, we do have work to do. We have responsibilities to take care of. And it starts with taking care of ourselves. And so that's the important thing about this podcast and what we wanted to do. But anyways, I just thought I'd drop that because I just thought of it thinking about that prayer and what you just said.
I love it. And again, we are thinking about yourself, because when you focus on yourself to get healthy and how you view you, again, aligning to how the Father views you, everybody else will reap the benefits of you. So it's that airplane mask illustration. Like the stewardess will tell you, put on the airplane mask first, because you are useless trying to help other people if you pass out. And so many people are like giving, and they're giving from leftovers because they haven't first understood their union with the Father and then stayed in that, recognizing who they are. When I work on myself, I actually give the best to my wife and kids. When I'm not working on myself, I'm looking for my kids and my wife to give me what I should actually already know from the Father. You see the difference? And so this is why it can't produce pride, because it's not your doing. It's your awakening to and aligning with what the Father already says about you. So day one, the Mamba mentality is you're recognizing one negative thought. The whole book for 21 days until you do it again is we're just focusing on one negative thought. You have to admit it. You have to write it down. Then you're creating a personal motto, which you will speak every day over yourself for the next 20 days, aligning yourself with one word that we go through in the devotional. And the personal motto was inspired by our stories with Aruba, One Happy Island, speaking something into existence. Again, I talk about it in the book, so go get the book. But then, so that first Mamba mentality is recognizing who you are as a son or daughter in God, admitting the one negative thought, and then creating a personal motto. Here's my personal motto, just for example. I created this in 2018. It took me 3 years of this work to actually believe it. My personal motto is this: I love me. I am whole and perfect as I was created. I belong. I matter. I am not my reputation. I am not my accomplishments. I am not my achievements. I am not my body. So I have some I love statements first, and then I have some I am not some statements, because those 4 things were the 4 specific areas in my personal counseling session where I realized I was getting my identity from those 4 things. And I didn't want to have my identity rooted in my reputation, in my body, in my accomplishments and achievements. I want my identity rooted in the fact that I am loved by God, therefore I should love me the way that God loves me. And that's the inspiration for this whole book. And I truly do believe that if you get this book in 21 days, if you do the hard work, because again, I'm just guiding you. You're the one that's going to have to do the work. In 21 days, your life could be drastically different.
I believe it. I've actually heard testimonies from people that have really changed like the outlook of their life. And I think maybe you'll have to set a reminder for this. But maybe we actually get some of those testimonies. And actually, if you have went through this book and you have a testimony about how this has changed the way that you have thought about yourself or your thinking, or has helped you in your mental health, why don't you reach out to us as you post the episode this Wednesday? Leave a comment on YouTube or on
better
Facebook,
yet,
Instagram.
Go to Amazon and leave a review and write that in the review in the book.
Okay. And then maybe we can read a couple of those along the way, just for some encouragement. Yeah, absolutely. And so there you have it. There's the beginning of this journey in What If I Told You. We're going to continue this, I guess, for the next 10 weeks if we have 2 words and 20 words to go.
Let's go.
And looking forward to that, excited about that. And also, I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the main reasons too, not just your 1-year anniversary of writing this book, but one of the reasons why we decided to dive into What If I Told You is that we will be in the Netherlands the beginning of November with Peter and Kira and the team at Foundation for Life doing a conference. And the theme for this conference we're doing there is What If I Told You? Yep. So this is just in preparation from that. So if we have listeners in that area from Holland, Netherlands, Belgium, and the surrounding area, we will be there. So make sure you check out Foundation for Life's website. I think it's free, a free conference, but you can go there. I think you need to register though for food purposes and just the setting and the seating, but make sure you do that. And
it's gonna
look forward to seeing you there. Absolutely.
Do the work. So as always, you're loved and there's nothing you can do about it.